Hi, welcome to my channel where I sometimes review things. Today we're sometimes reviewing Zootopia, and if you stay till the end, you'll see, a drawing I did because I'm Zootopia trash. So there's that. I want to really talk about this movie. I saw it on Sunday, and now is the perfect time to talk about sort of the lessons that have stuck with me that I remember 2 days after. I did write them down. I have a list. So I sort of know what I'm doing, but not really. So the first thing is don't prioritize success over ethics. At one point, Hops is given the opportunity to advance her career, and she chooses to do what she feels ethically compelled to do, instead of making the choice that would advance her career, and she's not condemned for it. The movie praises her for it. It validates her choice. It is not the choice, the life she chooses in that moment when she chooses to not pursue her career is not the life she ends up living, but that choice is celebrated, and she's shown as doing the right thing. And so it's incredible, because there's always all this pressure to succeed, no matter what the cost is, from everybody. And yet here's an example presented to children that success is not the be-all, end-all. In addition, there's an alliance in the movie that turns toxic and is ended, and it shows that that is an okay thing to do. And just because somebody is sort of in your camp doesn't mean that they're always going to be watching out for you. So, as far as I'm concerned, just because there's another queer person doesn't mean they're always going to be trying to do what's in our best interest. They might just be doing what's in their best interest, which could become toxic, and then I have the right to sort of terminate that relationship, which is huge to teach children. I have so much better than Frozen or anything, which is true. This is one of those movies that talks about how your parents just don't get it. But I think what this movie does that a lot of other movies don't is it highlights that a lot of times your parents really are trying to help you. They want what they think is best for you because they think it's best for you. And so Hops's parents are wrong, and they're clearly wrong, but it's also so clear that they love her and are trying to look out for her. And I think it gives parents more credit than a lot of Disney movies do. The fact that at the very beginning, Hops tells Nick, the fox, not Nick, the cheetah, whatever the cheetah's name is, she tells him that rabbits can call other rabbits cute, but other people can't call rabbits cute. That thing reflects slurs. I can call myself and other people who have okayed it queer if they're part of the LGBT community, but the second anybody, no matter how kind they are, or close to me they are, or well-meaningful they are, the second anybody outside the community uses queer for me, that's not okay, because it's a slur. And I assume it feels the same way with the N-word, because I know it's, logically the same way. So the only people who can use a slur are the people who have been targeted by that slur. Even if you haven't been individually, if you're part of the group that has been, but then that's weird semantics. And that's so cool. This movie illustrates downward mobility and the fact that sometimes sacrificing economic success, not just career success, is valuable. Because one of the characters, a rich hustler who is making $200 a day, definitely takes a pay cut when they choose a life of civil service at the very end. Is this ambiguous? Am I trying not to spoil a Disney movie? Yeah. The pay is clearly inferior, but the character's life improves, and that is what matters. There's definitely this sort of reminder not to judge people based on, like, where they come from, which I think definitely plays into the perception that us white people have of, like, black people as dangerous. I know, when my parents are driving through a primarily black neighborhood, they make sure that the windows are locked. And they start making all these comments about how they feel unsafe and threatened. And while I'm consciously criticizing them, I understand that I am subconsciously absorbing this bias, and I develop a bias, and all I can do is what Hops does, which is consciously do my best to acknowledge that bias and admit that I am wrong and do my best to overcome it. I think it illustrates that sometimes crime or bad behavior comes from external factors, and it's not always your fault, particularly when something happens to the otter. It's not his fault that it happened, it's a purely environmental thing, which you can make the argument it's people propelled by being victims of circumstance. It's like the protesters in Ferguson become what people in power deem as wild and uncivil because they are of these outside factors. Oppression. A huge lesson is that people can change. Hops's views change. Nick's behaviors change. Yeah, I mean, it says that stereotypes are bad, which is true. There is truth in stereotypes, but you cannot assume stereotypes are true. What I think is super huge is it teaches you to apologize not for forgiveness, but because you are genuinely sorry. And to admit that what you did is hurtful, and that just because you've apologized doesn't mean someone has to get over it. And there's this one super pivotal scene, and it's a huge lesson, and it's important, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I've been on both sides. We all have been on both sides. But just because someone apologizes does not mean you are under any obligation to sort of get over it. And you really should only apologize for something if you are sorry. Even if you judge others, like Hops encounters a sort of nudist animal colony, and she judges them, and she's never shown changing her opinion of them. So even if you judge people, because we all have bias and intrinsic thoughts and whatever, put aside your judgments well enough to work with other people. Controversial statement, you don't have to accept everybody's lifestyle. You just have to be willing to deal with it in a civil way. The movie addresses token diversity. Early on, it's made very clear that Zootopia police has sort of hired Hops to be their token rabbit, and she's not having it. It's the same thing that happens when you have like an all-white sitcom and they cast one Latina. It's like, we have our token person of color, TM. So we're diverse. No, that doesn't cut it. True diversity is organic. True diversity is not one person, and token people are put under such pressure to be the perfect representative. And token diversity is better than no diversity, but not by a whole lot. The movie addresses the fact that getting what you want doesn't always make you happy. Hops gets her job, but it's not as fulfilling all the time as she thinks it is. It talks about how biology doesn't control you, and I couldn't decide whether this was, like, had to do with people's perceptions of race, or maybe this was trans, like, positivity. Like, the fact that your designated gender at birth does not determine who you actually are. But the biological nature of predators to be predators does not control. Tells people to pursue those dreams. The whole Shakira Gazelle thing is a super useful commentary on those celebrities who start talking about a social issue without necessarily having the full story. Because Gazelle knows that Zootopia is changing, and it's good that she's bringing awareness to it, but she doesn't really understand how complicated it is. Because on the one hand, well, go watch the movie. You'll see. It's clearly all sorts of allegories for racism and sexism, and there's commentary on fat shaming with the cheetah. Like, don't judge him by that. It's great. I could not have been the only one who noticed that the fox repellent looked a lot like a mace, and that's because foxes are historically sexual representations. Like, mythology has all sorts of nonsense about what animals represent, and foxes represent, like, sexual sins. And so it's very much this idea of inherently mistrusting men as she's inherently mistrusting foxes. And I think it's a little different today when women mistrust men, or non-men mistrust men, than in Zootopia when rabbits mistrust foxes, only because predator and prey have lived in harmony and there hasn't been, like, attacks and stuff for a very long time, versus now it's like 1 in 3 women get raped or sexually assaulted. So it's a little different, but I see what they're going for, and I appreciate the theory. I'm not sure if I appreciate the practice. And then also, there's this whole girls are bad drivers, and then she becomes a parking cop her first day. So, like, there's that. And then there's this whole other aspect, which is that the fact that this movie is a deeply theological Christian movie. This is the most Christian movie Disney has ever made, and I'm a Christian, so I'm down for this. But, like, life isn't perfect. And that's, like, the final statement. Life isn't perfect. The world isn't perfect. Which is super great because Disney movies usually end on a high note. And when Hops says, because she has done something that she says, I wanted to make the world a better place, but I feel like I broke it. Bogo, the chief police officer, says, don't give yourself so much credit. The world has always been broken. Broken. Not flawed, not imperfect, not less than desirable. Broken. Because even though you said has always been broken, broken implies it hasn't always been. Like, that this is not the way it was, and this is not the way it's supposed to be. Broken implies a time when it was whole. And broken things often can get fixed. And the movie says, don't try to make the world perfect. You can only make it better. Which is, like, the most Christian thing, because we cannot make the world better by ourselves. We can make it better, but it takes God to make it perfect. And, like, holy cow. Holy cow, just such theology. Anyway, I promised you a look at my drawing of Hops. So, there you go. I spent way too long on it. And that quote, it's called a hustle, sweetheart. So, there you go. Her eye is slightly weird, but, you know, I'm down. I'm down with it. I'm proud of it. I like it. And that's my review of Zootopia. 100 out of 10. The most important movie you will ever see. Go watch it. If you have, go watch it again. I hope you have a great day. Why? I clicked on the